Okay, so probably the number one reason why people struggle in mathematics is they never really learn the basics. And oftentimes, students kind of breeze through kind of the easy stuff, assuming they got the kind of the basics, the foundations down, when in fact they don't really understand the fundamentals as well as they should. Now, what I have for you here is four basic easy equations for those of you that are studying any sort of algebra. So we have 3x is equal to 12, y minus 3 is equal to 8, m plus 2 is equal to 5, 2 thirds t is equal to 6. So if you can solve these equations, and these are very easy, hopefully all of you could be like, no problem. Go ahead and put your solutions into the comment section. I will show you the correct answer here in just 1 second. But kind of the main idea of this video is to strengthen your understanding about basic equations. And this goes right to the essence of algebra. A huge part of algebra is solving equations. And if you don't understand the fundamentals or kind of the concepts or principles behind solving these equations, well, you're going to have a tough time when it comes to more complex equations. But anyways, I'm going to get to all this in just 1 second. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John, and I have been teaching middle and high school math for decades. And it really is my true passion to try to make learning math as easy as possible. So if you need assistance in math, if you're struggling in math, check out my math help program at tcmathacademy.com. You can find a link to that in the description below. And if this video helps you out, don't forget to like and subscribe, as that definitely helps me out. Okay, so let's go to take a look at the answers. Again, we have four basic, we call these one-step equations. I'll talk more about this in just 1 second, but the idea is that we only need to take one step to get to the solution. And one other quick comment here, these are one-step linear equations. Okay, so if you're kind of wondering what type of equations these are one-step linear equations, kind of the most basic types you'll face in algebra. But let's go ahead and take a look at the answers. So the solutions are the following. We got x is equal to 4, y is equal to 11, m is equal to 3, and t is equal to 9. Okay, so how'd you do? Well, hopefully you got all four of these right. And if that is the case, let's celebrate by giving you a nice little happy face and A plus a 100% and multiple stars so you can brag to your friends and family that indeed you are a certified professional expert in solving one-step linear equations. They won't really know what that means. They'll be like, oh man, that sounds so complicated. And you should brag it up. You'll be like, yes, yes, I am a professional mathematician at this level. Okay, now if some of you got most of these right, or maybe none of them correct, well then this video is for you. Let's go ahead and get into this now. And again, what we're doing here is solving equations. So let's go ahead and take a look at just what's going on here. So we have these mathematical statements that involve this symbol right here. This is the equal symbol, and that means an equation, right? And let's also notice that we have various variables here. In this particular equation, we have x, this one we have m, this one we have y, this one we have t. Now, does it really make a difference what variable we use? No, it does not. In algebra, a variable is nothing more than a symbol that represents a number. Okay, now it's pretty typical that you use lowercase letters like A, B, and C, but you do not have to use these symbols. There'll be others, but when you're learning to solve basic equations, these are pretty typical standard type of variables you use. Now, I did mention that we're dealing with one-step linear equations, okay? Now, that linear part simply means that these variables are to the first power. We don't have anything like x squared or t cubed or the square root of m. These are other types of equations you solve in algebra, but of course you can't solve these types or learn to solve these types until you get these equations down. Now, a little bit before we kind of get into the specifics of solving these equations, what happens is once you learn these one-step equations, the next thing generally is you move on to two-step equations, which of course are equations that involve two steps, but basically two-step equations are nothing more than two one-step equations in one, and then you move on to multi step equations, etc., etc. So we're going to kind of really make sure that you understand the fundamental concepts of solving equations. And let's go ahead and start now. And the kind of the main idea when we have an equation in mathematics is we are making a statement that the left-hand side of the equation is equal to the right-hand side. This is very much like a balance scale. So this is kind of like my little scale right here. So for example, if I have 10 over here, well, and this is equal to, or this is an equation, then this side over here must be 10. Now let's think of this as a scale, but I kind of think of this, I go back to my childhood days when we used to have, I guess it depends where you grew up. This would either be called, excuse me, a seesaw or teeter-totter. But yeah, these are really cool games. I really don't see these too much at the playgrounds anymore. But anyways, you get on this thing, then one person would go this way, the other person would go this way, and you just go back and forth. And it was a lot of fun, right? Now, if a person over here weighs like, let's say 100 pounds, okay, and then over here, this person is 50 pounds, well, this is not equal, right? This is going to be like this. Our scale is going to be like so. And that's not the case with an equation, right? In an equation, we have the left-hand side equaling the right-hand side. So if we have two people that are sitting equal distance from what we call this fulcrum in science or physics, for those of you that like that kind of stuff. But you kind of can think of this as a teeter-totter or balance scale. And the main idea when you're solving equations is to keep the scale balanced. Okay, so for example, if I have 10 over here and 10 over here, the golden rule of algebra is the following. You could do whatever you want to one side of the equation, perform any operation. For example, let's add 2 to this side of the equation. Okay, all right, so right now we've made this side heavier, if we will, right? So this is 12 and this is 10. Well, we can fix this situation by simply adding 2 over here, okay? So we can add 2, all right, as long as we add 2 on the other side. And that is the main idea in algebra when we're solving equations is whatever you do to one side of the equation, as long as you do it equally to the other side, you're basically allowed to do that operation. Let's take this, for example. Let's multiply this 10 by 3. Okay, now this becomes 30. Well, that's not a problem. But I can fix this by multiplying this side by 3, and now we're back in balance. Okay, so remember, whatever steps you are doing when you're solving an equation, you have to do them equally to both sides of the equation. Now, if you can kind of keep that concept in mind, I think you'll be, well served with other types of equations. And we're going to get into the specifics of each of these type of one-step equations. But before we get going on that, it is important. We're dealing with fractions, like right here, we're dealing with fractions. You need to be up to speed on your positive and negative numbers and fractions, okay? These are areas that students typically struggle with. So, these are even more kind of like foundational skills that you need before you get into solving equations, right? Now, if you're struggling with this, you need to kind of stop and pause what you're doing and go back and strengthen your skills on fractions and positive and negative numbers. If you need help with basic math at this level, I have a ton of additional videos on my YouTube channel on fractions and positive and negative numbers, or maybe you want to check out my Math Foundations mini course. You'll see a link to that in the description below, or maybe like my pre-algebra course. But let's go ahead and get into each of these equations. All right, so the first concept that we are kind of learning here is that whatever I decide to do to this equation, for example, if I add a 5 over here, I can do that as long as I add a 5 over here. Right now, that doesn't serve me it's not doing me any good in this particular equation, but I'm allowed to do that in algebra. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get into basically the 4 types of one-step equations, and this is our first, okay? And this isn't not in any particular order. So this is 3x is equal to 12. So what is 3x? What does this mean in algebra when we write a number in front of a variable, this means multiplication right here. Okay, so this is really 3 times x. And that's the reason why we don't use this multiplication operator like 5 times 3. Okay, in algebra, if I want to say 3 times x, that would be like 3 times x. That's like 2x's. That's very confusing. We don't write things that way. So like 3y means 3 times y. 5z means 5 times z. So just, again, fundamental basic algebra stuff. But the main kind of idea here is that this operation right here is multiplication. Okay. Now, we're going to be talking about something called inverse operations. Now, if I said, here is addition, what is the opposite operation of addition? Okay. Hopefully, most of you are like, oh, is it subtraction? Well, yes, indeed, you would be correct. Now, if we have subtraction, what is the opposite of a subtraction operation? If you said addition, well, that is fantastic. All right, how about multiplication? What do you think the opposite of multiplication is? Or not the opposite per se, the inverse operation? Well, if you said division, you are on track. And with division, it is multiplication. And we want to keep this in mind because this is kind of the fundamentals of what we need to be thinking about when we solve basic one-step equations. Now, a lot of you probably don't, you're not thinking in these terms, but the better you understand it, the better you're going to be at understanding the concepts here, okay? Really what I'm here to do, I could teach you how to solve these equations in 33 seconds. 1, 2, 3. But then that's just memorizing, okay? You're like, or following a pattern. What you want to do is understand the concepts. Okay, so here we have 3x. This is multiplication. So when we see this operation that involves the variable, what we're looking to do is solve for the variable x. We want to get x is equal to one number. Okay, now typically we're going to want to have all our variables on the left and one number on the right, and we get an equation written in that manner. This is the solution to that equation. Okay, all right. So let's get back to this 3x. This is, again, multiplication. So what I want you to be thinking is, what is the inverse operation of multiplication? It is division, okay? Division. All right, so let's kind of put that over here as a little side note here. So what we have is multiplication, so we're going to be thinking division. So what does that mean? Well, the objective is to get x by itself, so we're going to have to divide. We're basically undoing the multiplication here, and we can undo multiplication by division. So we're going to divide both sides of the equation by 3. Now remember, I'm doing the same operation both to the left and right, so I'm not breaking the equation. Remember the golden rule of algebra, whatever I do to one side, as long as I do to the other, I'm okay. Now, this is going to be great because 3 divided by 3 is 1. Okay, that is 1x. Okay, and 1x is the same thing as x. Okay, so we don't have to write that 1 there, but 3 divided by 3 is 1x, or just x, and x is going to be equal to 12 divided by 3, which of course is 4. Okay, so now we have solved the equation, but effectively what we did, let me go and erase this, is we just basically rewrote this equation into its simpler form, okay? And that's a good way to think about solving equations. You're kind of just rewrite. These are equivalent equations mathematically, okay? But this one is better for us because this identifies the solution. See, x is equal to 4 is the solution to this equation, and you can always check that. So if x is equal to 4, we could replace this x with 4 and verify this, right? So we can go 3 parentheses, let's plug in 4 for our solution, and let's ask the question, is 3 times 4, is this equal to this? Well, 3 times 4 is 12, 12 is equal to 12. That is, in fact, a true statement, so 4 is indeed the solution to this equation, okay? All right, so we're just taking it nice and slow here, and if you're understanding this, you're like, okay, hopefully you're like, yes, yes, it's like all this data going into your brain housing group right up there, then that is what I'm talking about, right? You want to comprehend this stuff at a higher level. Okay, so there we go. We identified basic one-step equation where you have multiplication, we're going to be using division, and the golden rule of algebra. So now let's move on to another type of equation, and let's see if you can figure out what we need to do. Okay, so here is m plus 2 is equal to 5. Again, this is a one-step equation, and I gave you some hints here, right? So the operation involved is what? Okay, well, it is addition. Okay, it's addition. So you want to be thinking what? Well, you want to be thinking the inverse of addition. And what would that be? That would be subtraction, right? So we're going to be using subtraction, and what we want to do is isolate the variable. So how can we get m all by itself on one side of the equation? Okay, well, how about we subtract 2 from both sides of the equation? Again, we're undoing this addition. I have m all by itself, and then someone said, hey, look, I want to add 2 to my m. Like, no, 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 I want m all by itself, so I want to subtract that 2 away. Well, again, you could do anything you want in algebra as long as you do it equally to both sides. Now, one of the things that I want to stress is the format, how you write your steps here, okay? So here you want to show this, you want to subtract 2 and you want to do it vertically, just like this. And then when you want to put a line, just like so. And then what you're going to be thinking is you're going to be kind of effectively adding down in a column manner. So m plus nothing is m. Now you might be wondering, why did I write it over here? Well, because I already know that 2 minus 2 is 0. We don't need to write that 0. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay, so there is the solution. Of course, we could check that. We can replace this m with a 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 is equal to 5. That's a true statement. There you go. Okay, so hopefully you're getting a handle on this, and most of you could probably solve this. But again, the idea is to strengthen your understanding of the fundamentals. Okay, because if the better off you're like getting this stuff, you're like, oh wow, when it gets to more complicated equations, these principles, do not go away. All right, so let's get to the next example. But before we do, I would love for you to stop and hit that subscribe button, that notification bell. You have no idea of the positive impact this has on my channel. I think right now, and I'm really grateful, believe me, I am very grateful to have like 470,000 plus subscribers. I get a lot of subscribers, and that tells me that a lot of you are getting some, valuable content of what I'm trying to do here, which is to teach you mathematics in a non-textbooky kind of way. So, I mean, textbooks are great and stuff, but, you go to school, they just don't give you textbooks. They read the textbook, go back home, come back to school and then take the test. You need to be able to, have someone that translates this stuff. And what I want to do is give you all the decades of the School of Hard Knocks. So not only learning math, but teaching math. Again, I try to teach math in a clear and understandable way. And on my channel, you'll find basic math to advanced math like calculus and everything in between. But by you subscribing, it effectively makes me feel like you are my new student. Anyways, let's move back to the little mini lesson we have here and take a look at the next example. Okay, so I've given you hopefully some pretty good instruction here for you to figure out, what to do. And that's not only, for those of you like, yeah, I already knew how to do this. It's not the point. Why are you doing what you're doing? Okay, that's kind of the more, basically that's the bigger picture of this little video here. Okay, so here we have subtraction. All right, we want to be thinking the opposite or the inverse operation of subtraction. What undoes subtraction? If you're thinking addition, you're absolutely correct. So again, another one-step equation. So we have y minus 3 is equal to 8. So I want to get y all by itself, right? That's the objective. That's the solution. So I can undo this negative 3 by adding a 3 to both sides of the equation. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and do what we did like in the previous equation, just add down in a column manner. Y plus nothing is y. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. And then 8 plus 3 is 11. And there you go. That is the solution to the equation. Again, you want to get in the habit of writing these steps out this way. Now, there is another way of looking at how to do this, and I've been doing this for a long time. And you don't want to do it this way, okay? So here we have y minus 3 is equal to 8. Now you might be wondering why I put some space here, because in some textbooks they'll have you add the 3 kind of horizontally this way. Do not do it like so, okay? Don't do it this way. It's because you're making your work kind of go out from left to right, and this is going to really give you problems when you're dealing with more challenging equations. So the way you write the steps in math is important. You want to get in the habit of doing it this way, and typically, I would say 90%, maybe even more, textbooks and teachers are going to teach it in this format. But the important thing for you to understand here is you need to show these steps. Okay, you don't just be like, in other words, let's say you were in my class and you just gave me the answer y equals 11. All right, it all depends on how I'm feeling. I could give you a 10 out of 10, or maybe I can give you like 9 out of 10. Maybe I'll give you 5 out of 10. It all depends. And some of you are going to be very angry, or you'll be like, what are you talking about? I got the right answer. Well, you're not proving to me that you understand how we're going from the problem to the solution. That's what your math teacher is interested in, and that's what you should be interested in, is the steps. You need to show those steps and just get in the habit of doing that. Okay, so be nice and neat, and just structured all the time. And the better you understand this at this basic level, the better off you're going to be. Of course, when you get into more challenging equations. All right, so I left the most interesting equation for last because this one is kind of a special case. So here we want to first kind of discuss what is the operation that's going on here. We have 2/3, 2/3 t is equal to 6. So what is this operation? Now, some of you might be saying, well, this is multiplication, and that is correct. Okay, so therefore we should use division. Well, let's go ahead and do that. So now I'm going to get back. I'm going to show you another way to approach this. Okay, so 2/3 t is equal to 6. All right, so to solve this equation, we would do a division. We would divide both sides just like we had. Remember, we had 3x is equal to 12. We divided both sides of the equation by what was in front of the variable. Okay, so what's in front of the variable here? 2/3, right? So if you're saying, all right, Mr. YouTube Math Man, I think what you want me to do is to divide both sides of the equation by 2/3, okay? All right, so 2/3 divided by 2/3, anything divided by itself is, of course, 1. So we will end up with 1t over here. But now we have to figure out this, and this is a complex fraction, right? So we have 6 divided by 2/3. Now we could write it this way, 6 divided by 2/3. And of course, because all of you are experts in fractions, we're going to go, okay, that's 6 over 1. A division becomes multiplication. We're going to flip this fraction upside down, so it becomes 3/2. And so this is going to be 6 times 3. Remember, when we're multiplying fractions, we multiply the respective numerators and denominators. So 6 times 3 is 18 over 2, and that is 9. Okay, nothing wrong there, all right? We did this correctly, but this is not the easiest way to do these type of problems, these type of equations. So some of you might be kind of confused. You might be like, wait, what are you talking about here? You just taught me how to do something. Well, yes, you could do it this way, but I want you to learn another approach, okay? Technically, this is correct, okay, but I'm going to give you an easier way to think about this problem, okay? So again, the answer here is 9, right? So t is equal to 9. So let's think about this differently, okay? So although this is multiplication, we're going to be using division. Really, let's write this fraction a little bit different. Okay, we're going to write it, for those of you out there that like to write your fractions with the angled fraction bar, get in the habit of writing it with a horizontal fraction bar like this. So 2/3 t is equal to 6, okay? Now, the objective here is to get t by itself, right? That's what we want to do to solve this equation. So anytime you see a fraction coefficient, in other words, a fraction in front of the variable like this, so what you can do, which is far easier, is to multiply both sides of the equation by the reciprocal. In other words, take this fraction and flip it upside down, okay? So we're going to multiply both sides of the equation. Remember the golden rule, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So when we do this, okay, what's going to happen? Well, when you multiply any fraction by its reciprocal, the result is 1. Okay, if we multiply 3 halves times 2/3, we're going to get 6 over 6, which of course is 1. Okay, and that's what we want. We want 1t or t. So that's really kind of what you're looking to do. And this is just an easier approach. Okay, that way you don't have to deal with complex fractions, and just don't have to go through all of that. And here we could just go directly to doing this little lovely fraction work right here. So this is 6, but you're like, wait, where's when you get confused about a fraction times a number, just remember any number can be expressed as a fraction. Just put it over 1. So this is 6, or 6 over 1 times 3 halves. And of course, we have 18 over 2, or 9. So t is equal to 9. Okay, so now if those of you out there that watch this video, if you already knew this, you're like, oh my goodness, you didn't teach me anything. Well, then good for you. Okay, but I could tell you right now, most of you uh, you know, probably got, I would say a lot of you, got these basic equations right. But I suspect, most of you never really kind of assimilated all the concepts. Okay, maybe some, all right. But, it's good to review these concepts, all right, because later on in algebra, you're going to start doing much more interesting equations. Matter of fact, I'm going to kind of just quickly tell you real quick here, just for those of you that might be interested if you're starting out in algebra, what you have to look forward to, right? So when you're solving equations, what type of equations do we have? Well, we have linear equations. That's what we're dealing with. And those linear equations could be one-step, two-step, multi-step. There's a lot there. Then we have all different sorts of equations. We have quadratic equations. We have radical equations. We have systems of equations. We have rational equations. Then you have things like exponential equations, logarithmic equations. Let me see here. Other things that come to mind. Oh, we got matrices. Anyways, on and on and on. There is all different sorts of lovely different type of equations that you're going to be solving in algebra. So solving equations is a huge part of algebra, and it all starts right here, okay? Learning how to solve one-step linear equations, mastering these principles, because this is going to carry you forward as you learn more about equations. Okay, so again, if you need help with algebra or basic math, just check out my, you want my full best instruction with plenty of examples, etc., etc. You'll find the links to all that stuff in the description, but I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel there to help you out as well. Okay, so with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time and have a great day.